Welcome to Benno and Hamflett in your house, a podcast reviewing WWE's iconic new generation B shows in order from the bust back to the boom. I'm Benno.
And I'm Hamflett. And Benno, I'd like to think as we move into a more seasonal output from the World Wrestling Federation in 1995, we can, talk about the happier times, the discussion of friends and family getting to spend it together. Only it's the World Wrestling Federation in 1995, so family members hate each other and friends are separated by hospital beds alone. It's, you'd think there'd be there's Christmas lights slung above the house set, but the Fed itself is like plunged into darkness, isn't it? We are, and not just because there's nobody in the buildings, we are very much in like some pretty dark days for some of our heroes.
Mate, it's gotten so bad that Father Christmas is a heel. That's where we are in the world. Which, by the way, skipping ahead, I know to the next show, but like, who thought that had legs? Who thought, I know what we'll do? It's like the dog is not for Christmas. It's for the dog is for life, not for Christmas thing. We'll make a heel, right? And he'll be a heel Father Christmas. Right, Vince, but what about when the clock hits the 1st of January? What do we do then? Like, did anybody think of that? Like, no. That's the world we're in, and we got to make the most of it. It's a regional heat. It's seasonal heat. We'll take any kind of heat we can get if you're the WWF in the tail end of 1995.
I wish they'd applied that amount of like thought process to Triple H as a heel in like 2003. I wish like Santa Claus, where they were like, this is only going to work for a month. I wish they just looked at Triple H in about 2003 and just said, this is only going to work for about a month. Let's just take him off the road and push anybody else. I'm actually in favor of the Santa Claus clause for a lot more like headliners or mid-carders that don't deserve the spot. Just because they're not dressed like Santa, it doesn't mean that they should only be there 1 month of the year. More of that, I think.
Can we play a game of sliding doors? Because have you ever heard this talking point? Because you know me and you know, I think there's a few guys we agree to disagree on. I think mostly our takes are in line as far as guys go. Neither of us are big Undertaker guys. Neither of us are really big Triple H guys. Both of us are big Jeff guys. Have you ever heard the talking point of like, what would happen if Trips didn't marry Stephanie? What would happen if he did get released in 2003? Because the thing I've heard put out there that would happen if that happened, would he'd just have Jeff's career? That he'd start his own TNA, he'd be on the outs, he'd do like the WWA World show, the Australia shows that happened around that time. Maybe he'd end up, I don't know, working AAA, being a big heel in Mexico. Would he have wound up in AEW now? I feel that's insulting to Jeff, who's going to be a subject that comes up on this episode and the next episode. I'm not sure the cards would have quite been there to play for our mate the game.
He's not as versatile as Jeff Jarrett. He's never he's never done the wrestling equivalent of a Wet Wednesday in Stoke as a Triple H. He's never had to. He's always kind of stayed at that highest level, and he's comfortable in that environment. But you've never had to, loath as I am to compare him to like a Messi sort of figure. He's never been forced to slum it at one of the smaller clubs. He's always been the market leader, and he was quite what I think would have happened to him, it would have been the path that you've described, but he would have ended up back in his chair anyway. Because I think, you remember like in like the 98, 99 period when the Observer and Power Slam and the like were all saying, he's quite close to Vince. He likes getting in on creative meetings and things like this. This is when he was just a leader of DX and wearing his stupid Kangol hat that he'd stolen from Shane Douglas. He was still trying to like get influence because Shawn Michaels had sort of brothered him into the roots. What would have happened was he'd have got the sack. He'd have done that tour that you describe, like Bruce Pritchard, and then like Bruce Pritchard, they'd have sort of forgotten that they'd have ever hired and fired him, and he'd have just wormed his way back in again. And if you look at Triple H on the documentaries now, if you can believe it, Triple H likes the odd YouTube documentary on himself. I was shocked too. But whenever you watch his backstage footage, Pritchard's still there. There's still a few hanger-oners that have never like sort of tarnished their name enough and have never damaged the company enough to be completely ousted. And you just think he'd have been a shrewd enough operator that it would have come all. He wouldn't have had anywhere near the legacy. That's the difference, isn't it? They wouldn't insist on crediting him for the Attitude Era or calling it a tank or whatever. That stuff would be a wash. But like,
Or making him equal with Rock and Austin in like
Yeah.
those video packages from that. It's fine. He was the guy that worked with the guy. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That was great.
Yeah.
He was at a good level, a higher level than he should have gone, a higher level than Jeff deserved to get to. Jeff should have been in that spot if it was me. If I was doing sliding doors, I'd have swapped them the other way around. I want to know what happened in that world where Jeff Jarrett manages Stephanie. WWE. There wouldn't be an AEW. There wouldn't be any other wrestling companies. Mate. There'd be no need for it. Jeff has just taken over the world at this point, wouldn't he? If he was the man in charge.
Ultimate power couple.
Imagine it. Imagine the double act when they come out. Like, it'd be great.
Oh my God. The McMahon Jarrett regime. How have I never considered this timeline before? Oh my God.
There's money in that. There's absolutely money in that. Could he have been the leader of DX? I don't know about that. I don't know whether he could have pulled that off, but he could have.
Double JX.
Jeff crotch chopping. Like Hulk Hogan, we were saying last month, seemed to incorrectly remember himself being part of DX. There's a part of history where I reckon there's another version of history where Jeff could have been DX and Triple H is maybe on the outskirts. What would he even call himself on the Indies? What would his TNA name be? Would he just go back to Jean Paul Levesque? Triple X Jean Paul Levesque. That's what I'm going with. Something like that.
In Impact, he'd be Hunter the Game, wouldn't he? The Game Hunter. That's what he'd be in TNA. The Game Hunter. That's what he'd be.
What do you get that? The fourth member of the band with Waltman, Hall and Nash.
I was in my mind palace there. I went to a place where there was like D-Jefferation X, and he would do a crotch chop at the end of the strut, and he'd have his sort of like they're all great, but like whatever your favorite Jeff Jarrett gear is, it can either be the shorts with the J's or it can be the 95 vintage, but that in black and neon green. Like, can you imagine that in DX colors?
Different.
I want somebody I want that made for like one of the WWE 2K games now. I want a DX era Jeff Jarrett. You know, when you see John Cena in the NWO t-shirt, I want a DX Jeff.
Or like Triple H. That was the story, wasn't it? The Triple H saw like some fan made thing of him coming out doing like one of the Godfather's hose entrances or something like that. I was like, take that out of games. Don't let them do that. So he would be letting that fly. But I want to see it now. Yes. If anybody's out there who's creative in such endeavors, please send us D-Jefferation X or D-Generation Jeff. Send them over.
Benno, you've served up the perfect segue here as well, because we're gonna, for this edition of Housekeeping, for reasons that will become clear, we're gonna flip up the order a little bit today. We're talking sort of about a lot of the difficult things that are about to encounter some of our favourites back in the later half of 1995. But we're going to do our 5-star match review first today, because it just takes us to a happier time. It takes us to a very different 1995. The 5-star match review, for anybody that isn't aware still at this point, is something we feature on every Housekeeping. You'll always hear us plugging it. Like every podcast, we are simply on the beg for subscribers, 5-star reviews, and all the stuff that gets us up the charts and up the algorithms and gets people finding this podcast. We are no different. And if you leave us a 5-star review, put the rating in, and then leave in the comments box a request for a match. It can be anything from the new generation outside of our regular In Your House coverage. It can be anything featuring Jeff Jarrett, quite frankly, or CM Punk that myself and Benno are a fan of, or maybe something that neither Benno on GRAPPL or me on WhatCulture would necessarily cover in our regular sort of weekly output. Stick it in the comments box with a 5-star review. Help us game the algorithm. Help us catch the dead man and various other wrong-uns and grifters at the top of the wrestling podcast chart. It's not WhatCulture Wrestling, they're all right, but like the other bad eggs on the podcast chart. Let us catch them, and we'll do an old review. And I say all that because we've got one today from Shawn, who's left us a 5-star review. Thank you very much, Shawn. And Shawn has said, a fantastic podcast for anyone who remembers these from first time around. Thank you very much. I recommend for anyone who loves or has loved WWF, WWE, and for my 5-star review, please can I offer up Michael Hamflett's Wet Dream, Diesel versus Jeff Jarrett from the 20th of February, 1995, Raw. Keep up the good work. I mean, yes, you can, Shawn. Thank you very much. I welcome requests. Like, on behalf of me and Benno, we are very happy with that kind of request. But this feels pointed, doesn't it? Because the 20th of February 1995 Raw was, in case you're interested, Benno, the 99th edition of Monday Night Raw. We had an anniversary one on our last Housekeeping when it was the 2-year anniversary. Now we are just one off 100. It was the night Shawn Michaels revealed Psycho Sid as his bodyguard ahead of WrestleMania 11 and the turn that would follow. It was Sid's first night with the iconic Psycho Sid music. And later on in the show, it was very much the the Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior of the new generation, the world champion versus the IC champion, as Diesel takes on Jeff Jarrett, fresh off them Gatewell. Diesel kind of sort of retaining his title against Bret the Man Hart, and Jeff Jarrett defeating Razor for the Intercontinental title and deciding already, yeah, that's enough for me. I want to level up now. I want Diesel and I want him for the belt live on Raw. Before we get into the guts of this and Shawn's request, do you have memories of this match at the time and maybe what your thoughts might have been getting to see the big man defend the big one on TV?
I remember the Raw in general. I remember, it's funny you say that about it being like the first time Sid used that music, because I remember that music because that year, yeah, that would have been the right year. I was in year 6 in school, and in my music class, I got an A. I might have mentioned it before because I completely ripped off the Psycho theme of Sid, which my music teacher just thought I was like some prodigal son who'd managed to take like the theme from the movie Psycho and turn it into this weird instrumental that kind of worked. And all I did was copy Jim Johnston's homework. It was a recipe for success. I'd recommend anybody do it. You know, CFOs or the cunts who are doing it now, all of you, I think would make sense to possibly do. You know, anybody who wants that job might be a good shout. But yeah, I remember that from around this time. But yeah, this feels like this is the big push of Jeff in a lot of ways. This is, you know, like I say, it's champion versus champion, and it's billed as such. I remember at the time hating Roddy and hating Jeff because I was young enough to kind of still be feeling that way about the baby faces and heels. But yeah, just in general, the fact that it was on a Raw felt special. That was the big thing.
My memories are isolated too. I think I've discussed this on this pod before. Getting random tapes of whatever my uncle had pressed record on when he'd spotted the wrestling, knowing that I was just into it and I'd be grateful for anything. And it was a weekend edition of Superstars or whatever that had shown the build-up and the match from this Raw, because we didn't get Raw in the UK at the time. And Diesel had done like a sit-down with Vince McMahon in the WWF studio, and he's in his tracksuit. And as the coverage from the insider takes or the smart mark takes would say, what you are watching is sort of the death of Diesel. But I was simply too young and excited. He was there already. They'd made him the smiling, affable, nice guy who was attending the Raw has these clips on the NBA All-Star Weekend, and they'd had creative services come up with like a Diesel themed 3-piece suit that he could wear for the charity functions and the like. And I think the interview with them, it was either with Jim Ross or Vince McMahon, had them address the challenge from Jeff Jarrett, and it was Diesel kind of being cool hand Luke, but also being as goody two shoes as it could be by saying, I'm not going to let someone like Jeff Jarrett ruin this like dream of mine before it's already got started. Of course I'll take him on. And I remember as a kid, it sort of had, I think it had the opposite effect of what they were looking for. Rather than me seeing Diesel as this cool, laughable, charitable guy, I liked Jeff Jarrett too. I loved hating Jeff Jarrett. I just saw him as absolutely no threat. I didn't buy that he could touch, even though he'd won the Intercontinental title. I remember thinking he's going to get nowhere near Diesel in this one.
Diesel's tall, isn't he? That's all it takes when you're a kid. That's the logic they're relying on. He's massive. How could you possibly lose it? Pointed as well by how massive he is that I should have said, like, I remembered, I feel like WWF magazine at the time, and I'm sure our friends at WWF Wrestling 1 probably printed the spread, did a spread on Diesel going to the All-Star Weekend, because like that was the other thing. He's like, you can tell every conversation that's in this footage before the match is probably Diesel going back and forth with him and going, you're tall. You ever consider playing basketball? Yeah. And he's like, well, actually, back in the day. Yeah. And he's probably telling all those stories. But I remember all those photos, like Tatiana Ali is there, isn't she? Mm-hmm. Of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that I think it's Vince points out on there. Diesel cuts a little promo where he mentions, everyone's talking about MTV Unplugged, I think he says, which again is just a sign. Tatiana Ali and MTV Unplugged, what times they were in 1995. But like, they're trying, aren't they, so hard? But look, there's Diesel rubbing shoulders with celebrities. There's Diesel. He's just as tall as the NBA players that you like. They're really going for it.
I think this is from memory, so my dates might be slightly out here, but I'm sure it's right around this time, like certainly between January, February, March time, where there's that story, isn't there? Where, you know, that television convention, NAFT or something like that. And it's like a national television convention, and both WCW and WWE have got stands at the same convention. Yeah. And it's a real It's a win for Bischoff ultimately because Hogan and Savage, who they've just signed, are there at the WCW one, and the WWE one is empty, and it's Diesel and I want to say a Razor and maybe Brett, but it's like this sort of this quiet embarrassment that nobody wants to talk about. There, oh yeah, the wrestlers are here, and then what they mean is the WCW one, because for the first time they've got the more recognizable. Not that we would have cared as kids, by the way.
Guys.
That was the old folk song, but within television, they were trying to launch Nitro, and they had the muscle for it.
It's like that NBA footage, isn't it? Where, like, honestly, there was part of me thinking, as a kid, I probably just assumed they knew. Do you think any of them even knew who he was? Didn't get to explain that he wasn't like this new player that's coming from Russia or something like that. That's going to be like joining the Bulls. Like, it's like, no, actually, I'm a wrestler. You know, I'm Diesel. I'm the world heavyweight champion. That was the difference, wasn't it? In scope at that point, like, it probably was true. I always remember. I was going to say there was another one where, like, do you remember the WF magazine spread where it was Shawn and were it the Kids' Choice Awards, and they got a picture taken with is it Melissa Joan Hart, who was like Clarissa?
Yeah,
like, it was all my worlds like about it. And I remember the quote in the magazines going, "Yeah, I didn't really know who they were, but they were really nice guys." And it's like, that's the period we're in. Yep.
You think like all the celebrities that crew of wrestlers met at the time, other than if it was like Salt and Pepper who were working WrestleMania or whatever, do you think when they'd meet people at those conventions, those celebrities would be a bit like your nan, where they'd just be like, wrestling, is that still going, is it? They'd have just assumed that like it had been stopped a few years because it had no visibility anymore.
Oh, it probably happens now, doesn't it? Big Show probably does conventions and people go, "Oh, you should go back to wrestling. You know, you were really good." And you go, "Actually, I work for AEW, and that's a thing still." Probably still the case, isn't it?
Like that infamous time that some lapsed fans saw Chris Jericho when there was an overrun after the was it the basketball or the American football or something?
Yeah.
Oh man,
good night on Twitter. I enjoyed that one.
It was indeed. It was a good night for the app. But back to Jeff Jarrett and Diesel on Raw, and I want to start. You might have predicted that I was going to mention this. Jeff Jarrett comes out, of course, in the iconic red and white flashing Double J suit. He takes that off, Benno, and he's got beautiful shiny white gear with gold stars on the back and gold kisses on the front. Yeah, it looks like a good time with Jeff Jarrett, doesn't it?
It does. All those wages are going back, and I don't think the wages are very high. They're just going back into gear, aren't they? He's just invested in himself. That's what he's doing. Eventually, buy a horse. That's what our Jeff would do.
Yeah. Diesel, I want to give a shout out, by the way, a positive shout out to our friends over at Bretro, a brilliant sister podcast of your GRAPPL brethren. A polite shout out, even though I'm noticing that the shout outs are not so kind coming the other way, but here in your house, with the bigger men at Benno and Hamflett in your house, you know, we're very much on the Shawn side of the fence. If they want to go low with Brett, we'll go high with Shawn. That is absolutely fine. But they noted that, of course, at the Royal Rumble 1995, Diesel comes out. One of my favorite things ever as a kid, the truck going into the screen and the glass smashing.
Love him.
And I'm thinking, well, Austin took that, didn't he? Well, it's not the only thing he took, because obviously Diesel walks to the ring and he's dragging the belt. He's not wearing it round the waist. And it hit me here that I think this was the first champion I'd ever seen not wear the belt round his waist or over the shoulder. Diesel is carrying it. So you've now got black and chrome, broken glass, and dragging the belt. I'm not saying that Steve Austin owes his entire career to Big Sexy. However, the evidence is mounting up.
I believe. I feel like the call out, not to jump ahead, but when we get to the happenings that happen on the Raw when we jump to 1995, they're calling out for that kind of guy, aren't they? And it could have been Kev, could have been Ahmed Johnson in my version of history, but we'll also get to that. But yeah, totally. Like, I always love that. I think it's because he's tall enough, he can actually drag the belt, can't he? You know, that's why Brett was so mean about it, because he just couldn't. He's too short, isn't he, to box with God. Which is Diesel at this point. No, we're not going to win that battle, are we? The good thing is, by the way, if Bretro send any shots back, mate, I edit, produce, promote, and put that entire podcast out. So I can just make them say anything. AI is a thing now. They can say Shawn is better if I wanted those first 5 minutes, mate. We can load that power over them. Of course, we will. Great podcast. Great accompaniment, actually, to our In Your House 5 that we'll plug when we get there. But yeah.
I completely agree. If in doubt, just upload in audio commentary of Bret Hart versus Bob Backlund at WrestleMania 11 for all of their episodes until
over and over again. That's an idea for a podcast. It's like those lads who do the what's it called, Too Fast, Too Forever. You'll love this as an idea for a podcast. they just review all it's 10 now, all 10 Fast and Furious films, including Hobbs and Shaw, over and over again on a loop. I think they're on lap 102. I think they are, or something like it at this point. I've done one lap with them. They're just going to keep going forever. I feel like there's something in that. You could do that with wrestling. We'll have to come up with something.
There's guys I like who do something called they're from New Zealand, called The Worst Idea of All Time, and they'll do a film 52 times. And they did, like, I think the first one they ever did was Grown Ups 2, and it was like this universally derided bad sequel. So they did Grown Ups 2 52 times,
and one's quite. And
good. Then they did Sex and the City 2, which was another, like, sort of a version of Torture, having to do that 52 times. Then down the line, because they keep doing different seasons, they've ended up doing Sex and the City 1 after Sex and the City 2 52 times. So it's just this, like, it's this thing where they seem to want to punish themselves a little bit. But I'm assuming this happens in this Fast and Furious one. You sort of end up, the characters take on lives of their own because they've built up their own universe at this point within the story.
They're literally assessing frames now. Like, there's these other two lads I've heard of. They do this podcast where they review the In Your House series from 1995. Oh, sorry, wait, that's us. Shit.
What are they thinking?
Speaking of which, to get us on topic, the belt projection, how fucking good is that when Diesel comes out and they put the project? It's like, it's just the belt, isn't it? Why does that not stay forever? Why don't they do that now? That's so fucking cool. Like, it's amazing.
I love that. They had that for Brett and Backlund at Survivor Series 94, and I think it was gone before WrestleMania. I think it was gone before WrestleMania from memory. And totally agree. I've got that in my notes. Like, how class does that look? Just to like immediately add to the sort of the sense of spectacle in only like a subtle way. You're not going to see it in the building, but on television, feels big.
Superb.
But yeah, so you've got the two have entered. Jarrett tries to get a run at Diesel straight away because he's obviously got to take any advantage he can. And Diesel immediately just absolutely batters him. Does it at pace, like he's matching Jarrett's pace at this point because it's the first exchange. Drills him with some punches, clotheslines him to the floor. Jarrett takes some amazing bumps for Diesel as well. Huge Diesel chance. We say this with these new generation baby faces. There's not many people in the building, but the people turn up are hot for the heroes. And that's certainly the case with Diesel in February. The Road Dogg provides a little bit of a distraction, which opens the window, a crack for Jeff Jarrett, who gets in like a few punches. That's enough for him to justify his strut. But Diesel catches him out at the end of his strut, hits him with like a choke bomb, throws him in the corner, and then does the long leg 1 foot choke. And honestly, he looks 100 foot tall. He gets so far across the ring with that one boot choke. Such a great spot to, like, feels like Shawn's come up with that, doesn't it? Like, to illustrate the size of the man. What an inspired, like, visual that is. And Jarrett, as we sort of go at the first commercial break, is just in huge trouble.
It's really interesting, this, because it's like it's a difficult thing, isn't it? We talked about it before. We'd have given Diesel a go. We'd have given Kevin Nash a go as the champion. But then when you're making him your top babyface, he's got to wrestle like a top babyface. And tall men like that aren't really designed to be like that. So he's having to come up with his own spin on like the babyface shine, which, like you say, I'm certain, Shawn's in his ear kind of helping him put it out. But it's like, it's great because like he's hitting all his offense quite quickly. But it's actually more Jeff than anything that's like providing the movement for him, because he can't be a traditional babyface flying around the ring. So Jeff creates that movement, and like I think Cornette is superb on commentary in like these early bits because he's putting over that like this is just tactics. Like, Jeff is clearly moving fast because Jeff wants to tire him out, and Diesel better be careful because he's doing a lot right now and he's going to tire himself out. He needs to slow down, I think Cornette says at one point. It's superb. It's really good, and it logically gives Diesel a really good babyface shine, but also makes the match exciting because Jeff is just bumping, strutting, just constantly all over the ring, bouncing around the place, making it seem like there's more going on than there even is.
And speaking, of movement, this is not going to be the first time we're going to put over as individuals and as a double act, Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie on this podcast. The Roadie gets up on the apron yet again to try and cause bother with Diesel. What happens is he ends up taking the referee long enough for Diesel to take out Jeff Jarrett, and the Roadie looks and is like, oh shit, Diesel's on him. Diesel just bounces him off the outside of the steel post. The Roadie takes an amazing bump to the floor, and then Diesel launches Jeff Jarrett over the top rope again. But this time, rather than it just being a repetition of the spot, he lands on the Roadie. So it couldn't be more babyface taking care of business. The two of them have absolutely nailed what it is to sort of bump and stooge and sell to, as you say, sort of point out just how big and dominant this babyface champion is. The last distraction. Yeah, absolutely. The last distraction does work for Jeff Jarrett at long last, and he beats him around the outside of the ring a little bit, but obviously he has to get him back in the ring to win the belt. He can't win the belt by count out, so he kind of has no choice but to get him in the ring and then try and do it the fair way. To your point about Jim Cornette's commentary here, Jeff Jarrett hits that gorgeous drop kick of his, and he gets all 7 feet in the air to get Diesel in the head, which Cornette makes a point to put over. And as he's putting over the height of Diesel for how good Jeff's drop kick was, he then says, and this is the point, Diesel was this in basketball. He's this tall. Jarrett's got to get that high in the air. He's got to stay on top of him. It's the only way you beat Diesel. And it's like, my God, you are putting over both men effortlessly with these descriptions. Vince being Vince, but like Cornette, the space he takes, there is not a breath wasted.
He's justifying like Jeff essentially wrestling like a babyface, not in structure, obviously, with the roadie stuff. It's all the drop kicks, all across bodies. There's a second rope bulldog, in there. He's throwing all kinds of stuff in, and it almost babyfaces him. And it's Cornette on there, just grounding it, isn't it? Grounding it in logic, grounding it as like he's the heel and putting it over. I think this is a heel doing what it takes to kind of get ahead in here. It's the most I think you see Jeff do. Jeff's pulling out moves out of his arsenal here that you don't really see him normally do.
The problem is, because we're not biased on this podcast, we can admit the failings of people even as fantastic as Kevin Nash and Jeff Jarrett, I would say, is when you're watching Jeff.
Yeah, I agree.
When Jeff does loads, and you're right, he does do loads in this one. The problem comes, and I wonder if this is the sort of thing that goes in the back of Vince McMahon's mind that maybe levels somebody forever. Truthfully, there's not a lot of heat on Jeff on the offense until Diesel starts making the comeback. You're seeing like Jeff keep Diesel down. He gets a few 2 counts, but what happens is it's kind of they try and make Diesel a bit of a Hulk Hogan figure, and it doesn't work long term, but you can see why they do it, because Diesel's kickouts get stronger. It's almost like the more Jeff does, the more powered up Diesel becomes, and he does his own version of hulking up. He does this super kick out at 2 where Jeff flies halfway across the ring and gets onto his knees to sort of fight back, and that's where the fans come alive. They've kind of gone a bit quiet for Jeff taking the advantage. They were enjoying the Road Dogg stuff, but less so Jeff Jarrett. But once Diesel's back in charge, it's game over. He hits a sidewalk slam. Again, it's just like hard jabs left and right, hits the snake eyes in a big boot, but again, it's so fluid. It's not like the sort of stuff, well, really by the late 90s, Kevin Nash in WCW was slowing that sequence down because he kind of couldn't be arsed. But as Diesel, it's bang, 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 one after another. He gives a sign for the jackknife and hits it and wins the match, wins clean. The Road Dogg runs in. He takes an unbelievable big boot. That man is a ping pong ball in there. He eats a jackknife. The dreads, the caps come off, so the dreadlocks have gone everywhere. He looks ridiculous, but it's perfect for it as well. Yeah. Diesel, and it's like kids' favorite, and we should know we were those kids, but it's very like kids friendly Diesel. He's kind of, for our video viewers, I'm going to do an impression, but he's big into doing the like overbite smile. He's like, like that. It's not cool as an adult, but as a kid, you're like, yeah, Diesel. Big reaction still. It's only February. He's not killed the town yet. And right as we think everything's all rainbows and unicorns, you just see the looming threat of Shawn and Big Sid in the aisle looking on as Diesel celebrates, as WrestleMania beckons, obviously, down the line.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's funny because it's like, obviously we're going to get into in this podcast and the next one, the Diesel project maybe not working as a babyface, but like they're really trying. This is the peak of them trying here. He's trying as far as like the in-ring work goes, and you mentioned there that closing stage of the match, like I think his comeback's actually quite good for a man with elbows for knees. Like he's doing his best. He's moving around. He literally sprints at points. Like you see that a couple of times in here as well. And it's as definitive as a win as you're gonna get, and it rightly is. Despite it being champion versus champion, he's the guy you're going with at this point. Actually, I thought Roddy would get more involved in the finish, but the post match is entertainment on its own, and it cues up that year's ill-fated WrestleMania main event. But you can almost see the working out, can't you? Here of babyface Diesel and them just trying to. Yeah, it's a bit weird that we've got like a 7-foot tall top guy babyface, but we're gonna go like part Hogan, we're gonna go part working babyface. We're gonna give him all these different pieces, and we're gonna mush it together, and it's gonna work. And they're giving it the college try.
And Jeff as well, not the worst, as he's discussed as well. Never never an enemy of the Click, Jeff Jarrett, not like a best friend, but always somebody they respected and knew how to work smart with the right people, didn't he? If you think about his 95, he goes over Jarrett. He goes over Razor at the Rumble. He keeps his title against Razor at WrestleMania. He looks good for Diesel here. He got his face blooded up by the Kid at the King of the Ring the year prior, and then he obviously has that all-timer with Shawn Michaels in Your House too. So, the Click would have known that Jeff was like one of the better hands to have out there to make them look good too.
Yeah, savvy political maneuver as well. I'm still surprised he didn't find his way into the van, but he was a boat carrying the bags at this stage, wasn't he? So those sliding doors only go so far.
Yeah, the roadie must have been listening though, because he wormed his way eventually when
That's true. Actually, it does work for him. Actually.
But yes,
him and Billy.
Thank you very much again, Shawn, for your 5-star review. Another shout out for anybody to leave us a 5-star review and a recommendation, and we will review a match just like that. And
I was going to do a shout out as well for our last 5-star match review. So Chris Bellis, who was the one who came up with the pick. I don't know what happened in the notes. That I'll take the blame for that. That was my fault. But it was Chris who came up with the Quebecers versus 1, 2, 3 Quid and Razor. So correction out there, fantastic pick. And I should have remembered my old boss, my old job was called Chris Bellis as well. Every time Chris sends us a tweet, I go, hang on, who's that? Just double checking that it's not. My old boss trying to tell me off for not doing my work. But yeah, thank you for that as well. And obviously, if you want to be name checked, and I'll get it right going forward. Always great to get a 5-star review.
No, I second that. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Jimmy. And thank you, Shawn. And everybody else that leaves us these 5-star reviews, because it is nice to luxuriate in the happy times. But Benno, we didn't decide to do an In Your House podcast to simply live in the happy times, did we? And we have to start really where our last podcast ended. In Your House 4, you can take a little breather. It's done. We never need to revisit it again. And WWF certainly didn't want to. It was all change in the immediate aftermath. We headed to Survivor Series 1995. And what better way to respond to your most critically panned pay-per-view ever with one of your best of all time, maybe? A fantastic undercard highlighted by this thrilling mid-card opener featuring your Marty Jannetty's, your 1, 2, 3 Kids and the like. Somehow, exhibition of some of the best of all Japan women wrestling the best of your competitors on the undercard. The ingenious, once done and never again wildcard match that fans of a certain age will love and talk about to this very day. And again, with a shout out to our retro friends, the sublime main event between Bret the Hitman Hart and Big Daddy Cool Diesel that, of course, and I guess this takes us to 24 hours later, that begat the first ever headline tweener in Big Daddy Cool when he said a very naughty word after being cradled by Bret Hart, hit him with a jackknife, punched a load of referees, and said he was back leading it to Raw. Survivor Series 95, mate. What a night.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, and you're right. I'm one of them, along with like being the guy who's like, you know what they should do? Bring Jim Johnston back and have him replace Def Rebel. Like, my long-term wrestling takes is also, you know what they should do? Bring back the wild card match, despite like everything is different and it clearly wouldn't get over now, and it'd just be a red shirts versus blue shirts, Raw versus SmackDown match from a Survivor Series. But I don't care. The idea was so fucking good, and mostly Ahmed Johnson was so fucking good. I want it done again. It's a gigantic moment in my heart that I love this Survivor Series. Like we've said it before, you know, we're doing the In Your Houses. Maybe we can find time to review that in full one day. I'd love to, because there's so much fun stuff on it. Like say that wildcard match, the main event especially, and obviously the fallout. That's brilliant. Even probably the most I was a fan of The Undertaker, that moment when he takes the hat off and reveals the mask. I was terrified as a kid. Now it's a bit silly. It's a bit fancy. He's just got the Phantom of the Opera mask on. It's not that good, is it? But back then, terrifying. Absolutely love that. Like you say, the undercard's got your work rate stuff. Marty Jannetty does a powerbomb off the top rope. Never seen that before. I didn't know that. I think you were allowed to do that. It was like, what is powerbomb? So that's Diesel's finish as well, which is kind of like, bet Marty didn't get permission for that. Add like you say, the whole Japan women in there as well. Like it's just something for everyone. This pay-per-view, I can't say enough good things about it. Yeah, we'll have to go back and review that at some point. We'll find a way.
I wouldn't mind that. Yeah, we that's got the one of the biggest pops of the night as well, bizarrely, but I think I felt it too, is they make a big deal of the return of Mr. Perfect on commentary. Like as like a cold open for the show, and he gets like they have the new generation entrance, and then they have weirdly this like metal trellis that people have to walk through too, and he just looks like $1 million. Like it's anyone from that like that Hulkamania era that actually wants to be part of the new generation, they do come across like big stars, don't they? We're going to get to one of the biggest of all time making his surprising return in 1996. But it's I don't know, it is another period where like one of the reasons why we talk about these In Your House shows occasionally with reverence is because knee deep within the commercial rock bottom, there is gold. There is actual gold in there.
Yeah, and it does feel like it's a bit of a whole hands on deck moment, and not like they are talking to one of those big stars from the old era. They are bringing all the people in. Shawn Michaels is getting into the right position he should be in. Brett's obviously motivated by what happens in the main event. Diesel's about to we talked about the trial of him as top guy babyface. He's about to get into a much more comfortable role. It's a genuinely exciting coming out of like the depression of that last Day in Your House. There's some exciting stuff that like you can feel the seeds being planted for 1996. Like I say, the first time I laid eyes on Ahmed Johnson on this show, I honestly still think it. I'm stupid. I'm 40 now, and I still think Ahmed Johnson could have been Stone Cold Steve Austin. I still feel like maybe not Stone Cold, but he could have been something. Speaking of which, Austin's about to come in as well. Like the Ringmaster makes his debut around this time. Like there's actually exciting things being set up for next year. We're not quite there yet. We're still in the doldrums of the end of '95, but it's a real glimpse as to what this company could be, and because the parts are there.
I have this thing where when you get a Rumble or a Survivor Series or a December pay-per-view like we're going to get to, I always, in my head, decide if that is a product of the prior year or a product of the next year. It's like you say, is it a period where they're sowing the seeds for like 1996, or does this feel very, very 1995? And I think the show we're about to cover on the next episode, In Your House 5, and the Survivor Series feel like the first parts of 1996 rather than the end of 95. In Your House 4 feels like the end of 1995, and then these are like these new building blocks. I was going to mention, we're going to get to Raw in a second because things are about to get bad again for our friend Shawn Michaels. But speaking of being friends of Shawn Michaels, the floor is finally yours, Benno. I know you've been excited. Give the people what they want as long as you want on your first sight of Shawn Michaels and his new best mate, Ahmed Johnson, on this night.
Well, firstly, it was fear because like Ahmed Johnson, like he's so intimidating, isn't he? Like his first promos remember when they started airing them, and it was like fucking hell, like this guy's terrifying, and it's a wild card match, and like he could be a face, he could be a heel, he could be coming in to take out Shawn, but it's that I love the sleight of hand here that like they make. There's one of the early promos he cuts. He's like talking about he's gonna have in his very Ahmed Johnson way. Oh, Shawn Michaels, I'm gonna have your back. Like, and he makes it clear that actually he's a goodie, and actually he's not gonna be back in there Jim Cornette and on this Cam Cornette side. He's gonna help out Shawn, and it's just like it's a force of nature, and it's a genius move. It's every bit a genius move. The opposite with making Bam Bam Bigelow Diesel's geek mate wasn't. Like Ahmed, like you just wouldn't imagine like this badass dude being mates with Shawn Michaels, but he's the mate he always needs. He needs someone to cover his back, bit like the Diesel relationship. It's a bit similar to that. And honestly, I've never like felt anything like it. The force and nature that Ahmed Johnson is on Survivor Series 1995. They even give him the Yokozuna body slam spot, don't they? Which they just about pull off. He's just about to up off the ground. It's not a very high body slam. It's kind of more of a pick up and drop, isn't it? Than anything else. But like that got a pop from me. It's dangerous offense at the time. I didn't care about the safety of the workers. I was just glad he was beating up the baddies. Like that was fucking great. I love this version of Ahmed Johnson, the red gear, all of it. Like he's built like a brick shit house. Like I love him, absolutely love him. Can't get me to say anything bad about him until he bangs a weight on it a couple of years later. But in this period, next big star, mate, next big boom period was waiting to happen. Ahmed 316 there, the t-shirts that should have been selling.
I totally agree, man. Like I always remember thinking with the wild card, yes, Shawn can't necessarily trust the Bulldog or whatever, but him and Ahmed have got the red gear on together. They're like this pay-per-view's dudes with attitudes. They can trust each other. They're simpatico with one another. Yeah. And Ahmed, when Shawn kicks Yoko at the end, and Ahmed does a splash, but just puts in a big scream when he hits the splash. Like his arms just like, ah! And that's what adds the power to his move.
Just deciding the moment to do that, hasn't he? He's just gone, get that. That's what I'll
100%. Do. And I love picking up on these. And WCW are about to nail them with a couple of body blows. But once again, remember in when we were talking after the King of the Ring 95, so it would have been In Your House 2, and we talked about how they were talking about how Savio Vega had wrestled 4 times on one night, and that was a federation record because it was something they wanted to take away from Randy Savage. Is it not funny to you that Lex Luger debuts for WCW in September and Ahmed slams Yokozuna twice in October and November? It's like, Lex only did it once, the creep. Ahmed Johnson could do it every week, twice on Sunday. Like, they're just giving it to somebody else straight away.
It's immediately a spot. I love it. It's perfect. Also, did they give him like Lex Luger's spare knee pads and elbow pads? Like, why has he got so many? Who knows? It's one of the many mysteries of Ahmed Johnson. He just came up with it in the moment. I just love that about him. I just love. He's probably got no idea Lex Luger even existed. He's been put in this moment. Our Tony, he's green as anything. You can tell all the wrestlers fucking hate working with him. We see some of that on the pay-per-view we're going to be talking next time. And he's just out there, just green as grass, blowing spots, smashing through people, but being cool as fuck, and being the best mate that Shawn Michaels did. And I love that it's easy, isn't it? Like, make someone a babyface. Oh yeah, you want to slot someone like mid-card? He's actually, the top guy, Shawn Michaels, they're actually best mates. It worked on me when I was a kid. I thought Brutus Beefcake was the best wrestler in the world because I didn't want to be Hulk Hogan. I wanted to be Hulk Hogan's mate. Therefore, I wanted to be Brutus Beefcake. Ahmed Johnson, same role with Shawn here. What? It's an unbelievable introduction, like massively memorable in that wildcard match too.
And thankfully, we're gonna get back to that on our own podcast journey when in 1996 we meet the People's Posse, Benno. But before we get to them in the summer, we have to stay on Shawn because when Ahmed wasn't watching his back in the wildcard match, he takes the powerbomb off Sid, he takes the Razor's Edge off Razor. Yokozuna leg drops the head at one point, and he survives. But obviously, a lot of wrestlers have targeted the head, and as you and I know, after you've been beaten up by 100 Marines, it can get dangerous out there. And this was the last nice night Shawn would have for quite a while, because 24 hours later, after Diesel has shot on the Titan suits and the standards and practices and the people that had made him become a phony faker, that had made him slap hands with everybody, whereas now he's only going to slap hands if you buy the black Diesel glove, which robbed me and you of getting a high five because our dads wouldn't let us get the gloves. But once Diesel had cut that promo and acknowledged that one of his only mates backstage was Shawn Michaels, Shawn Michaels went out there in the black glove, all was rosy in the garden, or so we thought. And then Raw goes off the air to silence as Shawn passes out following the Owen Zaguri. Vince and Lawler leave the headset. Shawn's got the mask over his face. I think he gives a little thumbs up right before the show goes off the air, but an unbelievable bit of business for the time, this.
Oh, it's an amazing close. I watched this entire Raw. I threw it on over the weekend. Just like, I need to watch this, and I need to like put myself back in that moment. And I actually watched this footage not long ago. So we did a little project on some Shawn Michaels over on GRAPPL year before last called Shawn. Still out there. If people want to check it out. And I included this as a bit of bonus footage, and forgot how good it was. Like, forgot how like real and game changing it felt in the moment. Like, you watch it now with 2025 eyes, and it's like, I'm not sure that's how you'd really sell a concussion. The way like he slowly kneels and then falls, and it's all very Shawn Michaels and oversold, isn't it? But we didn't know anything about concussions then, allegedly. Therefore, you could get away with it in that moment. But it's everyone's performance in it. It's Shawn, the way it comes off like the insecurity, but then like he's okay, he does the clothesline, he gets back in the ring, he poses, and then it hits him. That delayed sell kind of makes it more dramatic. And it's Owen and it's Jim Cornette. Like, Owen, like, they don't go so far to completely break kayfabe, but you feel like they're working the casuals and the smarts at the same time. Like, they're working the casuals in that, like, it's like, are they concerned? No way they're concerned. They're still scumbags. Whereas, like, if you're watching it as a smart fan, you kind of, Jim Cornette does look like that's probably what the real life Jim Cornette would do. In trying to, try not to sell, but sell at the same time that they're concerned. Owen takes that step back. He's the one holding Owen back. Their performances are great. I feel like, I don't know if I've read this, but like, I'm sure one of the doctors is included on it, because there's like two doctors who are like very much treating it like it's the work that it is. And there's another doctor who you can literally, I don't know if you notice this, you can hear going, oh, he's fine. he's fine. There's no problem. He's all right. And it's like, shut up. We're trying to work something here. You can almost feel Vince glaring at him. Yeah, I don't know whether it was just somebody who was there who wasn't in on the bit or what. But like, you don't notice those things, obviously, when you're a kid and when you're in the moment. And it was just so out of left field and so out of nowhere. And obviously, like the other Shawn angle we talked about with the Sid one, you hammer it home on TV now for a very, very long time. And you see this footage a million times. But it's a great moment, and yeah, it's it was new at the time. It was something they hadn't done before, so that's why you did buy it and believe it.
You get one night for it to feel as real as it did, and I mean, this was out. The Sheets reported this at the time, and who knows who was feeding the Sheets, but Shawn Michaels was apparently the one that really pushed hard for the commentators to be in the ring or at least lay out. Like it wasn't like sort of in Vince McMahon's like vision to not call it, and apparently it was him that pushed for it. And again, it's one of the things where yes, the click, like what would happen if it was real? The click, you could have well fed that information out to the Sheets, and it could be bullshit. But it's not like Shawn Michaels had many friends in that locker room, so if they're reporting something actually positive about Shawn, it probably means it's true, doesn't it? And I just thought that again, it's how I reflect on it now rather than how I felt at the time. How I felt at the time was just in disbelief and shock that such a bad thing had happened, and with like gripped confusion about what was going on with Diesel. I didn't get all of it, but I instantly loved it. That's what I remember. And what fantastic booking for Diesel to turn heel on Brett while simultaneously acknowledging that him and Shawn are still friends. And then them have that moment backstage where Shawn's like, "You all right, big man?" And Diesel's like, yeah, we're good. Things are different now. You know, I'll see you later. I'm off. I'm away. So Diesel's out the building. So we know that Diesel's not going to come back and give up the hard man persona to sort of help Shawn. But we also know that they're mates and that revenge is going to be served on Shawn's behalf. Diesel can still back him up despite this very brave character move. Like I wrote an article for WhatCulture.com years ago about what I considered like pivotal moments in like the kind of formation and the shaping of the Attitude Era that don't get enough love or aren't talked about as much. And I consider this Raw maybe the very first one. And it's not just because Diesel plays with the form of like what it is to be a babyface and what it is to be a heel and to acknowledge Vince as the owner and all the little things Diesel does in this promo. But it's the fact that even though all these things happen that juggle reality a little bit, they none of them lose sight of the fiction. Like it never betrays the fiction. You are still trying to sell Diesel's next pay-per-view program. You're trying to sell this new character. You're trying to sell Shawn Michaels' Royal Rumble, which, by the way, we're jumping ahead. It does it to great success. That buy rate convinces everybody that Michaels is going to be the man in 1996. So this angle was box office at the time as well. It's got early Russo spark to it before that Russo sort of thing got abused. You know, like I really do think you can absolutely tie this to what we would then come to know as the Attitude Era.
Absolutely. Like, and it's funny, like you say that about the blend and the reality with the work. And I think that's just true of wrestling in general. I think you're on a hide into nothing when you try and pretend the whole thing is real. Thankfully, people don't do that anymore, but people still, we'll still think that's the way to go. No, the way you go is you accept that it's not real. But this issue between these two guys, that's real. Or this moment that happened with Shawn Michaels, that's actually real. And that's where you can still get away with working people. And that's when the stars align and you do the work shoot stuff, that's when it works. That's when the odd time Russo does nail it. It's those moments where the reality and the fiction blend together really well. But you're totally right. Like I say, if Ahmed Johnson wasn't going to be next Austin, like Diesel in this moment, like, again, this is why I love that 5-star match review that we did today, because what a contrast between that Diesel that we were looking at the start of 1995 and this Kevin Nash, who's just himself and he's comfortable and he comes across more charismatic, he's cooler, but then again, he's still selling everything. He's still, it's also like format breaking because he's talking like a heel. So you just assume, he's a heel now. Oh, well, there goes my favorite Diesel. He's like, no, but Shawn, I've still got your back. Like, or shout out to HBK or something like that. He throws in there as a line, and obviously brings up the thing about the black glove, and we'll only high five people with the black glove, which is a bit of marketing genius. I can't believe they haven't repeated since, because sales of those fucking things go through the roof. And Nash is thinking about the little bit of that he's gonna get. like it weaves so many of these things in, and it's the most comfortable, best presentation I think you get a Nash in WWF. Yes, there are negatives to having a tweener for all intents and purposes on the roster, and they do have to deal with that in the first part of 1996 before he goes full heel and before he fucks off to WCW. But like the positives almost outweigh those. The positives of like, whoa, this is a bit different. This is a bit. It's attitude before we knew what to call it. It's it's way before Steve Austin. It's way before any of the other stuff we'd associate with it, including the stuff Nash and Hall did. Like it's right there in front of you. This is probably the future.
Now, there is one small problem with all of that, of course. And this does kind of lead us into previewing In Your House 5, which is going to be the full review, the next subject of our next episode. And we'll talk a little bit about the final ever Sunday Night Slam and the run-up to In Your House 5. There is a certain World Wrestling Federation champion that feels like he's not getting enough attention. And based on the last 50 minutes of conversation that we've had, he might be right, because Bret Hart has become the world champion at the Survivor Series 1995, taking the first ever Spanish announce table bump in the company history. And the likes of me and you and everybody else are fascinated by Shawn and Diesel. He cannot get in there for love and the money. And to your point about how, yes, it should feel like we can all say this isn't on the up and up, but it doesn't really matter. Like you want to invest in the show of it rather than anything else. And in that respect, he's kind of given the best possible opponent for that, because it's right around this time, obviously, that for In Your House 5, he's programmed with the British Bulldog. They've arrived at a nice point in the story where, because Bulldog didn't lose to Diesel in that hideous In Your House 4 main event, and because Bret has beaten Diesel, Bulldog has felt like the odd one out. Bulldog has claimed that he can beat Bret again because he's got this famous victory that kind of hangs around Bret's neck as an anchor, ultimately from SummerSlam 1992. And it does put Bulldog back in the frame for a deserved title shot. But the closest they can get to this feeling anywhere as reality-based as what Shawn and Diesel are up to is for the first time to take Diana Smith from being in the middle of the two of them and just making her a heel and saying, no, sorry, Bret, I side completely with my husband. He's a baddie now, so am I. And what's funny about this, we've talked, and we have a bit of a laugh with the Retro Boys. We've defended Bret when he's had to go through the pirates and the dentists and the ninjas and the like. He pushed back on this creative at the time with good reason. And he still didn't really get his way, because he made the point that, hang on, my brother has turned on me in Owen. Then my brother-in-law turned on me in Jim. Then my brother-in-law in Davey Boy Smith wants to beat me again. Now my sister doesn't even like me. Is this not making me like the arsehole of the family at this point?
Do you not think it's you, Bret? Do you think you might be the problem here? Is the kayfabe problem there, isn't it? Like, he stops being sympathetic at a point. Yeah. It's one of them, though, mate. They saw the amazing buy rate of In Your House 4. It was like, we'll have some more of that. We'll put Davey in the main event again. And this time, and actually, to be honest, the part of it I do like, obviously, when we review the match, obviously, but like, it's interesting to see them in a very different way allude to their own history, because they don't like allude to their own history for like this period in general. Really, it's not a thing that happens, and especially once we get to Attitude, it's very much a thing that they stay away from doing, because 1992 from 1995 might as well be 400 years ago. Like, and it's weird to hear them say the words Wembley Stadium, and it's weird for them to acknowledge that, like, these are the same human beings that Diana Hart was crying tears of in the crowd and stuff. So it's actually quite an interesting thing to do, and feels like maybe something that Vince had to be kicking and screaming into doing. I guess SummerSlam 92 is a non-Hogan show, so I guess that's history you can acknowledge, and it's, a gigantic stadium show and stuff like that. But you didn't really see them, acknowledging their own history at that point. So it's at least got that interest level in it, I'd say.
They must have been so grateful that of all the people to be in that Wembley main event, it was two people that can actually feature in a main event now.
Yeah.
Like, how many times must they have had a clip where it's got somebody that's now in WCW, like a Hogan or a Savage or anybody like that who they cannot use? And they're like, not that they mustn't have believed their luck, because obviously they were booking towards it, but they must have thought, oh my God, it's a show from the good old days that we can actually still benefit from.
We could use it.
You had 9 WrestleMania main events they couldn't go near because they had Hulk on all of them. And finally, they've got a big show that they can benefit from. And it is, as you say, it's a kind of this key feature that they keep mentioning Wembley Stadium. It's something they can put in the video package, which is nice for us because obviously it connects us to a big moment in our sort of country's fandom as well. The last ever, Benno, Sunday Night Slam before we move into a bold new era for WWE with free-for-alls is just a kind of a Barker half an hour. Todd Pettingill, as always, absolutely amazing in the role on this In Your House 5 card rundown. Ultimately, what we've got is just a bit of nonsense in the building from Todd and then Doc Hendricks backstage. So we've got Doc Hendricks interviewing Ted DiBiase, Sid and the Kid, which I would recommend watching because the 1-2-3 Kid is absolutely awful with this stumbly bumbly heel stuff that he just can't emote because he's still the 1-2-3 Kid rather than Six, rather than X-Pac. He doesn't have the look or the confidence to pull it off, but Sid carries the weight as he always does with his usual quiet, loud psycho talk. And Sid and the Kid we'll get into. I loved that it rhymed, and I bought the difference and the contrast as a way for them to team. So that got them through it. Ray Rougeau and Sonny plugged the superstar line with Sonny used as a sex symbol for the first time. It's kind of gross, but it's a big move from her being a body donor and being a fitness guru that they have spotted straight away. Time to start selling sex. We haven't done this in a while.
People will pay money to speak to her. Like they'll do that. Yeah, they'll call that number.
Feels pointed. They are by the hog pen, and I have a lot of thoughts I'll save for the next podcast on that hog pen, but I couldn't not pop Todd Pettingill doing all the legwork, and then we go at the hog pen, and what have they done? They've made JR stand in the pig shit, because of course they have, in his suit, and he has to pretend like it's a home away from home because he's from Oklahoma.
That's what we do in the South.
You can imagine he was told that night, can't you? Jim, it's up to you, mate. You either put this black hat on or you get in the pig shit. And JR's gone, I'm not putting the hat on, I'll get in the slop. And then 6 months later, they've got him in the hat anyway. Henry Godwin's got his slop bucket, etc. Paul Bearer does a promo. Tonight's the night they're finally going to get the urn back. And then last but not least, Vince and Jerry Lawler cut in just before the show goes on the air. And Jerry Lawler is beaming, Benno, because he's got a big surprise that he can't wait to share with us when the pay-per-view goes on the air. And I suppose we can't wait to share our own opinions of that surprise as well.
Yeah, with spoilers, we enjoy it. But yeah, it's good, but it's good last minute sales pitch, isn't it, for the show? Pettingill's kind of enthusiasm is just unrivaled, isn't it, for this stuff? It's funny when he runs out to the live audience, doesn't he? You almost feel like they're like, oh, you. When he gets them going, he gets them cheering. It's same thankless job Jeremy Borash used to have in TNA, isn't it? But he's very excited for the Hog Pen match. Loves what the catchphrase they keep saying? It's like Suwa or some kind of pig shout.
Suwee, I think it is.
Suwee, I think it is.
A call for the hogs. I don't know. Yeah, let us know if you're Arkansas based, so you understand.
Pettingill loved it. Pettingill absolutely loved it. But yeah, the hard sell is very much on here for an interesting little card.
And just before we get out of here, it would be remiss, as we are about to say goodbye to 1995, and as we are about to say goodbye, obviously, to Diesel as the world champion and the like, and many other changes that are coming. There's something else we got to say goodbye to, Benno, because it took place one night after In Your House 5, but we're going to include it here. We're going to say goodbye to all women's wrestling in the World Wrestling Federation, because 24 hours after this pay-per-view went off the air, infamously, Medusa rocks up on Nitro, Alundra Blaze is dead, and so is the women's division as she drops the belt in the bin.
That's where the career began, and that's where the career ended. If you believe any WWE video package since, they really do treat it literally she'll appear on a Raw, won't she? And she'll be in the front row, and it'll be she'll be motioning like she's gonna put something in the bin, because that's all she does. She puts things in the bin. She's the Duke the Dumpster Drosy of women's wrestling, I think, at this point. How has it turned into such this law? Because it didn't even happen on a WWE show. It happened on a WCW show, but it's one of those moments I don't remember. Do you remember saying that? Were we getting the Nitros at that point? Because I don't remember seeing it happen. I don't remember even in the catch-up period that TNT were doing, running up to catching up, that I remember. It's something I only ever saw in footage, and they did make a lot of edits to those shows over here. If anybody remembers, let us know. But I only ever saw it in WWE footage. I don't think I ever saw it in WCW. I ever really understood that it was a thing that happened. It was just Alundra Blaze disappeared one day, and that was that. And that's all I ever really kind of knew about it. But obviously, it was a bigger deal in the sheets, and to the people watching WCW at the time.
I think that was it. I think my recollection of it was Power Slam. And you'll remember this. When you read about a thing in Power Slam and you are desperate to see the moving images and then
Sure,
just
yeah.
and you could go then a year, 2 years, 3 years of your life and never actually seeing it, but you've read about it. And it's definitely one of those moments that I remember, like the first time I saw it proper was almost definitely on some repurposed footage, either on I don't know. Because WCW were terrible with their own replays and clips and stuff. It might have even been like on a very early download or a tape that I purchased or something like that, where I had like a Nitro 1995 clips or like on Winamp where you could download individual clips. So it would be in ECW's. I've got like the memory of Brian Lee throwing Tommy Dreamer off a balcony in the ECW arena through like hundreds of tables or something like that. And just that looping MP4 was like worth a day's worth of downloading to get it.
And Tommy Dreamer taking
Blaze,
the pile driver off Rob Van Dam. That was my other one where he bounces up in the air. I had that gif. I downloaded that on Kazara, just watch it on a loop endlessly.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
I think like Alundra Blaze, because she turns it round, doesn't she, to face the hard camera? It's like it's sort of off to the side, and then it's quite nicely done before she drops it. I feel like I've got a memory of that, just that loop of her going like that and dropping it in the bin and just seeing it in silence for years before I'd seen the whole segment in full.
There's loads of stuff like that, like the Gonzo bomb moments and stuff. Yeah, these kids with the gifts, it take us 3 days to download that clip from Kazaa or whatever perfectly legal call services we were using in the late 90s/early 2000s. But yeah, I feel like I might have seen that clip too. And again, I probably read the WrestleCrap article on it before I ever actually saw it with my own eyes. Like now that I think about it, I think Nitro had started on TNT in the UK at the end of '95, but like I say, we were in a weird period where we were still catching up, and maybe I missed that week, but I don't recall seeing it in real time or it being a big deal until WWE hammered it home for the last 30 years since.
It's this is it, isn't it? It's I like it. I like it as a thing. I'm a big fan of. I basically just bought in when I was younger to the jabs and how important they were. Like historically, were they very significant? No, but when promoters tell the stories, they remember what hurt the most, don't they? So WWE through Vince McMahon would have told the story of Bischoff spoiling the results, or Bischoff would have talked about them getting Mike Tyson. They remember it because that was their business. Like that was them. They would have gone to work that day and thought, oh God, I remember that very, very bad day at work. So it probably wasn't as important as they would like to have you believe, but I just bought into that as a kid. Anytime there was a jab, like I love that Bischoff, like when Nitro was landing body blows every week in '95. I love that he comes up with World War III. Oh, they're doing the Rumble in January, 30 men, 60 in December, have 2 of them. Like,
how many rings you got?
Just double it.
We got more.
Yeah. We got more. Like, I just love stuff like that.
I was like, and again, it's funny, it reminded me of the time, but we weren't getting, I feel like Nitro was a week behind Raw. So we'd be getting those jabs but a week late. And he'd be like, guess what happens on Monday Night Raw this week? And he'd be giving you the results and it'd be like, that happened last week. What's he on about? Like we would always be behind on the Monday Night Raw, but I appreciated the jabs. It was just cool to hear like somebody on the other channel, say Shawn Michaels, or like when Diesel jumps over, be like, what's up HBK into the camera and stuff. The forbidden door, the forbidden fruit. I lapped it all up too, to be fair, once I understood the context a bit more.
Well, we're going to get a little bit more of that in our In Your House 5 review. And just as a little clue, let's just say the fact that it comes from Philadelphia does not go unnoticed on the broadcast itself in terms of other wrestling companies that might have been making quite a lot of noise in 1995. But people will have to tune in to our next edition of Benno and Hamflett In Your House to listen to the full review of In Your House 5 Seasons Beatings. In the meantime, Benno, where can they find you on X, social media, etc.?
You can find me on Twitter and everywhere else at Benson Richard E.
You can find me at Michael Hamflett, and I will just throw in a quick plug to search for whatculture.com/tickets. As you are listening to this, we are still embarking on our world tour. We are absolutely terrified. It is the most ambitious and stupid thing we've ever done, and we need to flog tickets. I don't even know if by this date tickets will still be available. I'm going to say yes, they are, and buy them anyway. Buy some for your friends, buy some for your enemies, buy some for my enemies if you want, and they can bring along some rotten fruit to throw at us. But we want people in building and bums in seats for our daftest ever undertaking yet. We're going to be in Manchester, Belfast, Glasgow, and London. If WWE's in town, we're in town too. And don't worry, all our shows take place with plenty of time for people to get to the WWE events taking place in the same cities. And if you're not going to WWE, come and do that, because it's the perfect place to have a pint with other wrestling fans at a far more affordable price than Paul Levesque and Lee Fitting's insane ticketing. So, join us on the WhatCulture World Tour, where, of course, it all ends in Las Vegas on April 18th as well at HyperX. Just a little plug there. And I suppose, Benno, across that tour, maybe I'll get to say to you, thank you for the house.
Thank you.